Good evening. We are here with Pashi again for a second session on Orville and his life and work for Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Where were we, Pashi?
So this was the
The
moment,
centenary celebration?
centenary celebration, and then came my way the entire Himalayan range after that success, because the process was that you organized a committee there for celebrations, headed by the chief of the state, political chief of the state, and mother's flag would be hoisted on the ceremony, and then people will make speeches and discussions and all that, and celebration will take place in whichever form they decided. So this gave me an opportunity to come and receive the flag of the mother, go back with whoever was to be the chief guest. Mostly it was Nava, okay, for him to hoist the flag, and I was there to coordinate because I had done the work and all that, and then come back and make a report to the mother in a small A4 sheet, read it out to her, and she will give you her blessings for having done it successfully. It was done in a very army style, Operation Successful Mother. So Nava felt that having done that difficult task, that I could do more. So he mentioned the mother. So what happened? Then it was the 7 states of Assam, Bhutan, Sikkim, because Sikkim was not part of India at that time, Nepal, Andaman Islands, in between Burma, Bangladesh, because Bangladesh had just got their independence and all that. So all these were done in 72. I was traveling all the time with two other colleagues from time to time, but I was the one who was doing most of the thing, because I had not to ask for permission from anybody because I was the head of the organization. And I used it as an excuse for doing business as well. So after this successful operation, then I made a request to the mother. Mother, please grant me the permission to come. And she looked at me for a few moments and said, "We shall see." Even then, there was no clear.
Yeah.
This time, I burst out crying, to be honest with you, came down, and I was sitting in the meditation room and crying my heart out. So Nalida came and said, "What happened?" So I explained to him. Now, this was coming very close to the early 73s,
Okay.
December 72.
Oh,
And that's what a time when she was well, she was not well,
Right,
she was well, she was not well. So most of the time, she will not see the people, then start seeing them again, and so on and so forth. So I said, "Nalita, I'm desperate, I don't know what to do, and without her permission, I cannot come." He says, "Why don't you write a short note to her, and I'll promise you, I'll read it to her." So I sat the Smadhi, wrote down, "Mother, please, for God's sake, let me come." It was a plea. He took it the next morning. I was waiting for him to come down because he used to go 6:30 or so
Yes.
every morning. So I said, she didn't say anything, but when I read it out to her, she smiled to the extent of laughing. And here are the 3 phrases that she's given you. Surrender was one, patience was another, and aspiration. So I said, "What do I do, Nalita? I'm not at that point that I can." He says, "Go by the heart. God says to you." Okay. So for me, the heart said, "Come." But before leaving, I had done something prepared a list of all that I owned and what I may get in terms of compensation if I leave the company. Sought her permission to go with this information. So I said, Mother, thank you very much for giving me the permission to come. And she looked up. So I said, this is what I have to offer to you. And she picked up the magnifying glass and started looking at it. I see there are 3 insurance policies. Who is the beneficiary? I said, Mother, my wife and children. Have you consulted them? No, Mother, I'm the head of the family. But supposing they decide that they don't want to make this life, no, I will not accept this. She asked for a paper. How much premium do you pay?
How much?
Premium you pay.
Premium.
So much per year for all 3? Yes, Mother. Okay. How many years before the first policy matures? So many years. She does the calculations and she says, this is the amount I will not accept. I leave it with you in trust. The balance I accept. I was so full of joy. I went back. I resigned my job. My board said, let us find an alternate for you. They asked me for a 1 year's time. But it was full of joy. And that year passed before I could even realize, but I did not tell my wife. So when we made the final journey, because I had only clothes of ours, nothing else, because everything else was provided by the company. So I didn't have to really do anything about it. Packed the suitcases and we were ready to come. Children were already here. The young girl was with us. And in the train, halfway through, I told my wife we're not going back. So for 3 months I lived in, by that time Mother had passed away. Okay, because the last time I had her darshan was on my birthday, 73.
Oh.
And then the day she passed away, I was actually in Digboi, in Assam Oil Company, where Dilip Datta was the medical officer. And I was visiting there on work of our service. And I was his guest when in the morning he woke me up and said, Mother is no more. 17th of November. And then we virtually left together from there, but he decided to come by road, somehow or the other, to come to Calcutta and take a flight. And I decided to take a direct flight from Bagdogra to Chennai and then to. And the weather was so bad that there were no flights for 3 days. I'll come to the airport and go back, come to the airport and go back. And I reached one day too late on Mother's Madhi here. That's part of the story. But then when I shifted, 3 months I stayed in Pondicherry because there was no accommodation in Auroville. But as soon as a hut became available, I moved into Aspiration. And my adventure began with Auroville.
And it's been a long adventure.
It has been a beautiful, beautiful adventure.
So share with us all you can about the early days of Auroville and your work there.
Well, in Aspiration, we had one bicycle amongst the lot of us. I think there were 25 or 30 of us who were living there in the huts. And for everything, you had to come to Pondi. So if you were lucky to get the cycle allotted to you that day.
So but your wife and children were there?
Well, the children were already here because the boys were here already in the school.
In Auroville school.
Because they came from 71.
Right.
And in those days, the system was that there was a house mother and the children were taken care of that person. And then there was a Parsi lady at that time looking after them. So I didn't have to worry about them. So it was only the little girl. By this time, I mean, she was...
That's Anjali.
Yeah, Anjali. Yeah.
Anjali, yes.
So my main work was connected with Auroville's future. Because I don't know, some or the other, Roche and I took to each other from the very beginning. And we became very good friends. And it was, for me, in spite of the fact that I was a mechanical engineer, neither an architect nor a civil engineer, yet planning was in my blood. So I was totally involved with that activity, and there was no other activity except planting trees anyway, or a little bit of the school that was going on. I was not an educationist, so this was my field of activity. So from 68 onward, I was connected with Roger's office. And this is what prompted me eventually to bring Auro Service, the Auroville, into operation to support this program so that the planning of Auroville can continue. So this was eventually taken over when the foundation trust came. So this was also along with all the other assets and all that. But that has been my main involvement with Auro Future, Lavenier, or whatever name it is called, planning.
Did you often go to Nolini, or did you meet other of the older ashramites here?
I knew all the trustees. I had good relationship with Dhuman Bhai. And every now and then I used to accompany him to the ashrams, farms, and also when he eventually purchased this land for Auroville, what's it called? Annapurna. You see, Annapurna is a story in itself.
This is on the road, off the main road.
Yeah, no, Coot Road, on the industrial
Coot Road,
area.
yeah, Coot Road, yeah.
It's on the right-hand
Right.
side. It's 110 acres. The beautiful story about this is that Dhuman was known to be tight-fisted. This is why perhaps he was the treasurer. But he will not spend the money easily. So once a contribution came through Dhuman Bhai, and mother told him, go and spend it, Dhuman. Spend it on what, mother? Whatever you do. Just... Dhuman, being Dhuman, couldn't do anything. So he went and bought this land and offered it to the mother for Auroville. That's how Annapurna, because he was so convinced that this will be the granary of Auroville, that he called it Annapurna. So I used to frequently go with him, but even from the beginning, that was a bad purchase, to be honest with you. It was not meant for farming. And even today, we have recovered only about 25 acres.
Interesting.
And one of the Reddys was the first person who took up that project. Then eventually, I mean, he left. Then all that equipment that he had purchased to set up the farming and all that came to Aurobindo. Cow John took over. So irrigation and all that. And that after all, Cow John also left, and then that cattle came into Auroville and all that. That's another story.
When did you begin with your Matrimandia work?
First was with the Bharat Niwas. That was when I was Calcutta to start arranging the thing. And Matri Mandir, basically, my main occupation was with Auroville's future. But Matri Mandir, I and my wife used to go and do the digging. Sometimes in the night, sometimes early mornings, sometimes late evenings, whatever time the shift was. So digging was the work that we were doing at Matri Mandir at that time. Then came this political upheaval. And this is also a very beautiful experience as far as I'm concerned. Because one day the chief secretary of Tamil Nadu, at that time, Mr. Karthikeyan,
Oh, yes, I remember.
came to visit ashram, and then he came to visit Auroville. and somebody from society brought him, Govind Bhai brought him to Aspiration, and he asked me if I will conduct him from there onward. So I took him around because there was nothing else to show him except Aspiration and the schools and so on and so forth at that time, and a mango grove at the back.
Because foundation for Matrimandir was
71. 71.
71.
71, yeah.
So there was just digging.
Correct. So the French revolutionaries started following me and calling me a traitor.
Oh, because you were taking him?
I was taking him, and because he had come with a society person. So I was identified with the society. And if I was trying to explain the educational system to him, all life is education, will come the collective voice, things like that. There is no schooling. It's only all life is education. There's not this, there's not that. I mean, they were just falling all over the place. The result was that I was banned from having my meal in the common kitchen as a result of this action that I did.
Did you meet Satprem?
Yes. Yes.
Can you share a little bit that we can't edit?
I had gone to visit him where he was staying in that garden.
Nandanam.
Yeah, Nandanam. But to be honest with you, I was not able to correlate with him.
Okay.
Because some or the other, I didn't feel aligned with him. I'd heard about him. The only thing I remember hearing about him was that mother used to give him 3 cigarettes a day. I've read the agenda, though. I mean, but at that time, perhaps I was not really into it. And also, he had become a cult figure.
Yes.
And for me, the cult figure, anything other than Mother and Aurobindo was not acceptable, plain and simple. I still don't.
Yes.
I had a lot of respect for Nalnida, but I wouldn't even say that I had that kind of a feeling with him. So from that point of view, somewhere there was a resistance in me. I had a very pleasant chat with him. Even when the Matrimandir foundation stone laying was done, we had traveled together from Pondicherry. So we had a bit of a conversation as well, but I could not correlate to him. And in my mind, I think this French revolutionary aspect was a little too strong because, and he was identified with that some or the other. Although with Rocher, occasionally we used to talk about him because he had a regular communication with Satprem and all that. But I personally was not able to relate. I mean, that I want to be absolutely honest with you.
And so, tell us about the ensuing years.
So
the
during
late 70s, for example.
So during that period when this problem started, and I was stopped eating at the Aspiration kitchen, I made a couple of attempts, but I was physically pushed out. Whilst my children were allowed, Naveen was in Aspiration, still in school. Vinny had been in the Matrimandir camp. You may remember him.
At the center called Peace.
Correct. And no food for me. My wife was allowed to eat, but I wasn't. So what to do? So I forced my entry into the kitchen, took a glass of water, I drank it, sat there, drank it, thanked everybody, came out. So it was like being on a water strike. Till some of my friends in Kotakarai and elsewhere learned about it, that I would refuse. So they will bring a tiffin carrier full of food late at the evening, leave it outside my hut with a Pashi, there's a food for you. So I'll share it with my family, whichever. unless they had eaten already. It went on for some time. Till one day I receive a visit from a nominee of Aurobindo Society. Will you accept the prosperity from us? I said, yes, if society feels responsible to the mother. I put a condition. Didn't hear anything more from them. Then Alan Bernard contacted me. Will you accept a basket from Portus? I say, Alan, yes, if you feel responsible to the mother. No basket either. I've had this problem from the very beginning.
Difficult times.
Because my personal feeling is, not having accepted the responsibility from the mother to take care of the people's needs has been one of the major mistakes of our Aurobindo administration. And this is why we're in the position that we are today. We did not rise to the occasion to become responsible. So we started devising methods and means which we were familiar with. The word prosperity, which is a beautiful word, we converted to maintenance. From there, we come down here. We bring it down to our own level of incompetence. It hurts me every time when I hear the word maintenance. So I have been saying, and more people are now agreeing to use the term prosperity. So I'm so happy. It's the same thing in everything else. I mean, most of the people today, out of that insecurity, have to work for their own living to survive. So therefore, how can they devote themselves to Aurobindo? Out of almost 2,000 adults today, only about 480 people are receiving sustenance. And that also in varying degrees.
Really?
Yeah. All the rest are either they're starting guest houses or they're taking money from commercial units that they're running and all that. It's nothing coming to Aurobindo. Or they're working outside. Because in Pondicherry, anybody with some kind of a competence can get a half day's work at 25,000 rupees a month. And then we started Portus with this, such a beautiful idea.
Yes.
And what we have converted into? A place where we have imported goods to offer to Aurovindians. Dog food, cat food, preferences. I'm amazed at the mentality that has undergone such a change that instead of being willing servitors of divine consciousness, we have become stakeholders, we become owners. This is the present Aurobindo which is shocking. But because we did not accept the responsibility, if nothing else, Noah had so many problems. But there was one sense of him that he accepted the responsibility. In aspiration, we never had to ask for anything. It was there. Children were enjoying their life. There was no question of fees being paid. Today in the schools, the 5,000 rupees per child, a charge. And we're accepting children from the outside at 15,000 rupees a month. We don't talk about Aurobindo, the mother in the school, because we are secular. It's an amazing negative development that has taken place in Aurobindo, just because we failed to accept that responsibility. And I'm very concerned.
The few Aurobillians I have interviewed, I found to be very devoted.
If there was no devotion, Aurobindo will not be what it is today. Because like in the ashram, same thing in Auroville, it is the few devoted, the quiet ones, who are actually sustaining Auroville spiritually. But if you look at the majority of the people, today they are talking about writing a new terms of reference for Auroville as we want as citizens. What has happened to the charter?
Yeah. And all that mother has written.
You talk about the charter where everything is indicative except one. And that is to live in Auroville, one must be a willing servitor of the divine consciousness. Must. It's a condition. Where are we? Are we citizens? Are we stakeholders? In one of the meetings I had to say, there's only one stakeholder here, and that's the mother. And if we cannot willingly collaborate, at least we should not go against. Today we are a house divided. Every time a new working group membership comes in, they change the entire policy, the topsy-turvy, everything. And what is a resident assembly? An amorphous body, which from day to day, they don't know what they're doing. And we have now to re-emphasize what is the purpose of Auroville. Today, nobody wants to talk about it. I mean, I have now become a mentor for the newcomers because it's a new thing that has started now. At least I think it's a step in the positive direction. But when I talk to these people who apply for becoming newcomers, haven't a clue what is Auroville about. It's either a new age idea or it is something to do with the what you call the eco-village, ecology. Okay, they are part and parcel of it because they are an essential component of our way of life. But they're not ends into themselves, but they come here to do that. There's so much ignorance today about Auroville that it's amazing. Between us, the old timers, okay, we share a totally different relationship and totally different talks. Yes. But here, when you talk to them, they're not on the same plane. And they're competent, they're intelligent, and they've made a choice. But for what? Mother made 4 zones,
yes,
functional zones.
Yes.
Today's planner says, oh, zonal idea is an old-time idea, it doesn't exist anymore. It may not, but in Auroville it has a purpose.
Absolutely. She drew it.
Of course. Now, industrial zone is basically to generate revenue for Auroville, right. Products and revenue. Okay? Products to an extent that you are needed and surplus so that you generate revenue. No, it's experimental. Experiment for what? Experiment just for the sake of experimenting. So what we have discovered that whatever industrial activity started, first of all, when it started, it was highly appreciated. It was because this was Indian product with European packaging. But basically, it was an accessory to comfortable living. Incense sticks, soaps, perfumes, things like that. I mean, they're not essential to your life, but the way the packaging was done, I mean, it was appreciated wherever you went. But people also copied at lower prices, so they became competitive. Now we have lost most of the business abroad because the others were doing it. And in the last 10 years analysis, in real value, we have gone minus.
in that one area.
Yes. Now that was to be revenue generating area, which is instead of growing upwards, is growing negatively. Mode closed down. Many other activities closed down because they had no more business. Their contribution became nominal. In the meanwhile, guest houses came up, various other individual enterprises came up, basically for their survival, not because they could contribute to Auroville in general. Leave aside contribution to build Auroville, which required a different kind of a capital.
Yes.
Even our own sustenance. Recently, for the first time, a study was done to identify that if we had to classify it in terms of value, how much we would need to take care of each and everyone's prosperity. We arrived at a very handsome figure of 66 crores of rupees a year on the existing population level. What do we have actually? 5.5 crores.
Really?
Yes.
Less than 10%.
Yes. Commercial units are showing a turnover of between 80 to 90 crores a year. Their contribution is at the rate of overall 9%.
I have heard this. I have heard this.
Very inventive accounting. Why? Because we are insecure. Even from the normal physical point of view. To sustain today in Auroville, a newcomer requires not less than 20,000 rupees a month.
20,000
rupees a month. Because that newcomer has to contribute 3,150 rupees to be in Auroville, to a common fund. There's no accommodation, so he has to rent accommodation, rented by Aurovillians. But anything between 5,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees a month. That's another source of survival by the people. Sorrow belongs to nobody in particular, belongs to me. This is the present situation. And we are heading towards the 50th celebration.
Yes.
50th anniversary.
50th anniversary. Do you see any light?
Yes. Yes, because that's what I say, that quiet minority that holds the candle is still there. A couple of months back, a new movement started. Let's create Auroville together. Going back to the fundamentals, the vision of the mother, the true Aurovillian, the charter. And the first meeting, more than 250 people were there. It was, for me, a joyful moment. Because normally we get a gathering of 100, 110, 120 at the most. 250 people, jam-packed in Unity Pavilion. So I think there's still a very, very great hope.
It's her creation. It cannot fail.
No. But unfortunately, the people who are nominated, selected to take up the responsibility, including the governing board, for me, have not really discharged the responsibilities properly. Now, this is something I'm going to say off the record, but governing board has worked out a budget of 28 crores of rupees for celebrating the 50th anniversary. My question is, It's like burning firecrackers on a celebration when you are starving. What kind of a sense is that? When you don't even have the land that you need to build a city on. 28 crores of rupees in workshops and conferences and blah, blah, blah. Is that the purpose? There's total imbalance. And that's exactly how everyone in Auroville feels today, behaves today. Somebody has the children's education to take care of. Somebody has old parents to take care of, because there is no, like, you see, the mother would take care of everything. I mean, when I was surrendering it was in the hope, as they said, mother said, you surrender to the divine, divine takes care of you. That principle applied. This was at the back of my mind when I told society and that, if you're responsible, yes. But we have lost that sense of responsibility. And now we are counting like accountants.
Previously, we would have people like Madhav Pandit, Aurobindo Basu, giving talks in Auroville.
They're not encouraged. People like that are not encouraged anymore, except at Savitri Bhavan. And Savitri Bhavan gets identified
As
Shravandan Mother devotees. So therefore, to be a devotee of Shravandan Mother today is criminal in Auroville. Why do you quote Shravandan Mother? Charter is good to put on a wall. When you hear these kind of comments, all you do is you smile. Because if you get hurt, you're stupid.
yeah.
You just pass it off and say, all right, this is the nature of the being, what can you do? But there is must be a common link which brings them here. Maybe there's still a hope for every one of us at different levels.
Let us hope so.